Welcome to all our wonderful friends on High Five Live. We're so thankful that you've joined us today, and boy, do you have a treat today.
Absolutely.
One of our dearest friends, and we'll tell you all more about him.
But meanwhile, while you get on, we would love to know where you are viewing from. So let us know and put any other comments that you would like to know or questions. And we will proceed. We'll introduce our guest. This is Jonathan
our dear
Johnson.
Friend. We've known forever.
We love this man.
Oh, you're too kind.
And we could go on, but we'll just tell you a few things. Number one, he is so enthusiastic about digital communications and is so good at it, and media. And he has spent nearly 13 years, right, professionally involved in it.
Worldwide, lots of influence there.
On matters of public relations and communication, he has advised major companies, many universities, institutes, national governments, NGOs, and many media organizations, including Deseret News and Deseret Digital Media. Wow.
Just to mention a few.
Just to mention a few.
That's not all. Listen to this next one.
He has spoken on the topic of digital media and journalism in 14 countries and to a variety of audiences. I would say, we were just talking, he has friends all over the world. And he's addressed audiences in lectures, forums, and devotionals at numerous domestic and international universities.
In fact, recently, a 3-country-wide conference about citizen journalism, he was the keynote speaker and flown in to do that right before COVID. So,
yeah.
had a chance to do that.
Oh, yeah. So we are just excited to have him here. He's got a beautiful family, a beautiful wife, Heather. Heather, thanks for sharing him with us today. And
he's the CEO of a major social media effort that supports the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And we're so thankful for all the things that you do, Jonathan.
Well, you're kind, and thanks for the kind introduction. It was more than
a lot more. You know,
yeah,
I knew you when you were a college student.
We have to say that he's really into cycling.
Yeah, scuba diving, cycling.
And the arts and running and all those kinds of things. And we just love watching the posts that he puts on Facebook because he's got beautiful, beautiful pictures that he is into and a part of.
Really kind. I've never gotten comfortable, despite the fact that I may do a fair amount of public speaking, with the bio being read. It feels like I'm attending my own funeral. And you get to hear nice things that are being said, and I don't want to rush that process any.
We're done. We can go on.
Yeah, great.
We could go on, but
thank you to your audience for putting up with that. And
yes, we've got Wyoming and Idaho and Virginia so far, Chicago, Margaret, Pam. Good to see you all here. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for joining us today.
Sweden, we've got Karina. Thank you.
And then the list goes on. Jonathan, we could talk about your life forever, but it's so fun to have you here to share the remarkable experience you've had with Discovery that changed, especially your mom's life, and made such a difference in your own. And I think it will inspire people so much. So we'd just love to have you talk about this remarkable experience you've had.
Well, thank you for the opportunity of doing it. And I think, having a show entitled The Gathering is so fitting and important as we consider the Prophet's counsel to gather on both sides of the veil. Family history, when I grew up, was a kind of a scary thing. And in large part, I think, because of the way in which it was presented with good intentions. Nevertheless, I didn't feel like the hearts of my ancestors, to harken back to Malachi 4, were turned to me. I felt like their eyes and fingers were turned to me, almost in a position of animosity, saying, how come you've been so lazy? Or through your omissions, I'm still stuck in some eternal place of stagnation. How dare you, get to work? And I wasn't fortunate to be born in a home of rich pioneer ancestry that had done all the work and took some of that pressure off my shoulders. and so maybe I looked at family history through the wrong lens. But family history has really been a wonderful personal journey for me. And I think by extension, a wonderful journey for members of my family who also participate in family history and some of these powerful discoveries. But in response to your introduction, one evening late, I was seated next to my mother, and we went through a box. In fact, the box is immediately to my right, that she had received of archival photos of our ancestors, and namely our Portuguese Hawaiian ancestors. And inside were aside from these really neat archival photos, letters, and to my curiosity, I stumbled onto some 8mm reels and wanted to know what was on them. And so over time, as I kind of inherited that box of photographs, and as curiosity got the best of me, I went and had them digitized. And to my surprise, I found my mother's father. Now, why is that significant? Well, I think in part when we think of family history, we think of family history in a distant sense, right? Not in maybe an immediate sense. And for me, what I discovered was my father. And you'd say, well, why is that significant? Well, it was because my mother never knew her father. And as a result of his passing away 6 months after she was born, and decisions that were made by her mother and who she chose to marry, all semblance of him effectively disappeared.
Huh.
And so tragically, I think for her, she lost touch of someone who even posthumously could have played a significant role in her life, but didn't know much about him. And so finding this was a treasure for me. And so when I found her father, I didn't just see him and maybe for the first time, I really saw him. What I mean is I saw his character, because after all, these weren't still shots. These were 8mm motion pictures.
Wow.
And I got to see him throw his children in the air and ride with my Uncle Jerry on the handlebar of his bike, something I've done with my kids. And it not only did it humanize her father, but in many and maybe more important ways, it showed his tenderness with his children. Every image of him was him holding on to and loving on his children. So that was a real treasure to discover.
And so different than your perception, right?
I think so, and not just mine, but maybe the perception that had been presented to my mother.
Yes.
And this opened up not just healing opportunities, but opportunities to get to know him more. And in that process, finding out that he was one of the first missionaries to open with Brazil with Gus Faust, Elder Faust's older brother, and later with President Faust, that he, with his companion, was involved in teaching Elder Ijekaitis' father, and in that conversion process, things we didn't know, and he was the connection to the only connection we had to pioneer ancestry, but we didn't know him, and so this inherited legacy had been kind of lost, and who knew that it would show up in a box from a great uncle who had passed it down from Hawaii. And that my great-grandfather, Anton Andrade, had videoed my grandfather, my mother's father. So it was a sweet, sweet experience.
A Portuguese Hawaiian box that finally gets to you from a distant relative. I mean, that whole story is obvious that Heavenly Father guided this process. Truly,
and I think to underscore that, this great uncle, who was my grandmother's cousin, who had passed these images down, and I don't know where and how we got our hands on these reels that were in this box, but he didn't have any biological children of his own. He had adopted children, but didn't feel that because they didn't have a biological connection, that he wanted to pass these down. So for whatever reason, he felt inspired to pass them down to my mother, and we had that unique opportunity. But again, I think this concept, it really is about hearts. It's not about eyes. And there's a dimension there that I believe is quite significant, because as we examine the scriptures, both found in Malachi as well as in Doctrine and Covenants in section 2, I love the distinction in the nuance that you find clarified in section 2 that you don't get in Malachi 4. And it's about the promises. The hearts of the fathers are turned to the children because of the promises to the fathers. And when we consider these temple covenants and attendant blessings, have we stopped to consider who is the recipient of those blessings? And so I'd like to think that it's not that they're just simply dependent upon us. And maybe it comes from my being a father. And as a father, what mothers and fathers love to do is to protect their children, to provide for their children, and bestow upon their children things better than what they've experienced. So instead of looking necessarily at family history through the lenses of, well, my ancestors are dependent upon me, I think it's the other way around. That truly we are the beneficiaries of the covenants they make, that we get to help in this wonderful multi-directional union where they make the promise, and then the attendant blessing, as we know, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's blessings are upon the heads of their posterity. And so the richness of family history, instead of it needing to maybe use this sense of guilt and obligation, should be this, wow, as we come to know you, not only do we come to know ourselves, but you, our forefathers, get to bestow upon us the blessings, the same way I got to ordain my son to the priesthood. And he gets to make an open covenant, but I got to bestow blessings upon his head. And that, to me, this kind of opening of my eyes and understanding was really has been neat through this process.
Oh, it's beautiful.
I think it's such a wonderful example also in the scriptures. I mean, you think about Nephi or you think about Enos, their big prayer was, I want my experiences to bless my children. Please preserve these records so that my life can bless them. It's that same thing that they desire greatly to bless us, not just that we can bless them. And I think that's absolutely good.
You know, you think, and we write according to our prophecies that our children may know.
Right.
None of this is self-serving. And yet I think sometimes, again, with good intentions, we may project that it is, that this is, that they desire this for themselves. The temple blessings are not to be hoarded. While we do receive personal blessings, they're abundant in nature. And what a great thing to literally knit the hearts. It's not about eyes and fingers.
No.
It's about our hearts being turned to them out of love and understanding, and their hearts reciprocally being turned to us.
So true. And since then, you found additional relatives. And wonderful things have happened because of that.
We talk about the challenges of COVID, and they exist. And you know, my son right now, I think today, comes out of quarantine. But what an opportunity it's been for me. I heard Elder Holland reference recently the introspection that the time has given him, the time in the scriptures, the time to reflect on his own self, the time to do things that really matter. And boy, my wife complained because there was a time where I got lost in family history during COVID. I mean, truly, I didn't come out of my home office for a long time because I was so excited about these discoveries. And with recent technology, my goodness, it's so much easier than I remember watching when my mother first got involved in family history and went with her to the Family History Center to go over microfiche and microfilm. And what a process, laborious process. Now I've got newspapers.com, right? And on newspapers.com, I found, which was really quite fun, I found a wedding announcement that none of us in our family knew existed, of my grandmother to this grandfather, my mother's father that I mentioned. And in it were some details we didn't know, including her connection to a man named Ray Andrade. And Ray Andrade, I wanted to know who he was because he sang at her reception. And so I searched Ray Andrade and I Googled him. And to my surprise, he was one of the most still is to this day, popular Hawaiian singers and musicians. He had orchestras and nightclubs and performed at the Hilton Hawaiian Village and in all of the, you know, and I've had this closeness. I remember the first time I was invited to speak at BYU Hawaii, my wife and I, aside from the feelings everyone gets when they visit Hawaii, right? This is a paradisiacal place. It's you all want to cry when you leave Hawaii, but we felt this deeply spiritual connection. And of course, my grandmother being born and raised there, not knowing yet that we had all of these ancestral ties. Well, to my surprise, when I saw his picture and when I Googled him, I found he was in Hollywood movies. And there was a link on YouTube to this movie that he was in, and my heart was beating out of my chest.
Really?
It was like seeing a ghost. In fact, I didn't say a word, but I showed it to my youngest, is 5, and she looked at me terribly perplexed. And then I showed it to all of my other children, and they all gave me the same look. How did you end up? Why are you in the black and white film?
I know, it's just like you.
And the string genetics was amazing. And since then, I've had a chance to meet his son. He was my grandmother's uncle, though they were close in age. And I never would have known had I not found that newspaper article, which then led to all kinds of things. And that discovery helped me unlock, these various walls that I kept coming up against as I was trying to find the next connective piece, link in the chain that would open and unlock. And so anyway, it's been really quite fun. And I've been very musical in my life. And as it described him, it really is amazing to see that, again, while he's not that far removed, it added some more fuel to my enthusiasm.
Yes.
You sent us that picture, and I showed it to everyone that knows you, and they all said, "Oh,
is that Jonathan?
that looks just like John."
It is really quite crazy. In fact, when you met his son looks nothing like him. And the son said, "My goodness, you look a lot more like my father than I do."
Oh, that's
and we know
amazing.
that you're passing on this love of discovery to your children. Do you want to share any other things that you do in your home to promote family history and discovery?
Oh, it really is important, I think, that the children are involved, not just in the experiences, but in the stories, right? As they see these things, and we've tried to adopt both traditions and ideas or things we appreciate about the cultures that we come from, and that's been fun. But I think as we think about younger people, family history and things that they're interested in, for example, my 16-year-old enjoys gaming, and to a degree, family history really is set up that way. It's you get to be a detective, you get to go out and mine, you get to go find things. And so when we think that family history is just for those who are older than us, or that's what our parents did, or our grandparents did, it really couldn't be further from the truth. I know in past church service, I had a young man who really took to this as we challenged our youth in the ward to get involved. And he found 10,000 and indexed 10,000 names in the space of 3 months, in 90 days.
Whoa.
But he really got it. He got into it, and it was exciting. And so, I think sometimes we might think, well, when our children are our age, they may take interest in this, but in reality, it's fun for them. There's a lot they can do in the discovery process that fits those kind of stimuli that they're accustomed to, of accomplishing something, you uncover something, you get to organize, it fits.
Like
So-
Elder Bednar said, their fingers have been trained. They can teach us how to make discoveries.
So I love what your mother said when you showed her all that information and asked her what a difference it made in her life. And that's the message, right? What did she say to you?
Yeah, I asked her, I said, what the question I had posed was, after she had a chance to see this, was, would it have made a difference? And how do you feel? And would your life have been different, was the question I raised to her. And I remember her response in tenderness was, it certainly would have. But rather than dwell on the past, the exciting thing is she knows, and we can too. And these discoveries are help refine and define us. I mean, even some of my proclivities that I have stylistically, when I saw this great uncle on camera in this film, my face does that, and I make those gestures, and so you come to kind of find yourself as we look back, I really firmly believe that that our proximity is closer than we think, and that they're still quite interested and invested in us, and that they're looking to bless us far more than we will ever be able to bless them.
Yeah, I agree with that so much. Jonathan, it's been so great to have you on and to have the chance to interview with you.
Well, so appreciate the opportunity.
And we want our audience, our viewers, to know that on the Family History Guide, you can just put that into your browser, YouTube channel, Jonathan tells his story, and it's beautifully
And you can actually see
filmed
the
and-
film of his grandfather on the bike.
Well,
So touching.
and thanks to the Family History Guide. It's a great resource for those who aren't sure, they want to get their toe wet, but aren't quite sure. how to push ahead. So
Yeah.
thank you both. Love you both. And thanks.
Thank you,
Jonathan.
too.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Have a
Thanks
wonderful
to everyone in the community. Wish you well.
so much.
Thanks to everyone.